It's also true that whites were genuinely had their view of the problem fundamentally changed in the 1950s and early 1960s. Whites really did, in an uncomplicated way, say we have really oppressed blacks in the past. What we have done is unconscionable, and we have to fix it. And it was not something that was coerced out of them as something they ought to feel. It was a deeply felt thing. And the triumph of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, I think, is a reflection of that. And it wasn't very long after that, within the next 3 or 4 years, that in a way, the whole civil rights thing was handed over to the lawyers. So it was no longer, if you're an employer, it was no longer, we never even bothered to interview blacks before. Come on, we've got to reach out and find blacks who want these jobs and interview them and hire them if we can. It changed from that to, if we don't have enough blacks, the EEOC is going to be coming down on us. And or do we have enough to be safe? You know, and that diffused a lot of the moral thing. But then there was another transition that I'm worried about now. Because even then, people who started to think about dealing with the effects of racism legalistically, they still thought it was a good idea, by and large. You know, they didn't like some of the aspects of it, but it's still the thing you needed to do. The transition I'm talking about now is from, gee, I wish, I didn't have to worry about all these rules and regulations regarding hiring, regarding if I'm a policeman, the way I behave and so forth. It's transferring from that to a more fundamental and more emotional, I've had it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of blacks complaining about this and that and the other thing. It's time to suck it up. Nobody knows what the size of that reaction is, but it's got to be out there.
I'm thinking about a book I read a long time ago by a German political scientist named Elisabeth Neumann called The Spiral of Silence. And her argument was, it was in the early decades after Nazism, and she was talking about German political opinion. And there was a line, there was a script that you were supposed to say as a decent German about Hitler and all of that. And of course, Hitler was Hitler. But the rise of Hitler was a complicated and profound development in German political culture. And it had many aspects to it, that were nuanced and complex. But the line that you're supposed to say in public was a very narrow line. She speculated that a lot of people had problems with that line, thought outside the boundaries of what was acceptable opinion, but, you just didn't say it. And because you didn't say it, no one else knew how many of you like-minded people might have said it. And her point was, this is unstable. This thing can unravel. And when it begins to unravel, it could be overnight. And you look up and you've got a completely different world. It's a very dangerous situation. And I feel that way. I don't know what you'd say to this about our time around the racial questions. I just wonder, so I'm agreeing with you here, how many statues you can take down of founding fathers, how many crowing exhibitions you can give about the demographics making white people into a minority. It's going to be a minority country soon enough. White people are desperate. They're being marginalized. But how many books you can in effect ban because they use a word out of, the lexicon that's supposed to be acceptable. How many accusations of racism that you can throw around and not engender a backlash?